Settle in, get a snack. We're talking about 6 months of books today. In my last wrap-up video, I did a 4-month wrap-up between July and October, and now it is in the month of May. I also used my hair waiver for the first time, the hair waiver I got from the Goodwill, so you are contractually obligated to tell me that it looks nice, and I was genuinely surprised when it worked when I plugged it in. We have 38 books to talk about today. I'm gonna be here for a while. It's honestly a good thing I'm benched from Raid tonight so that you and I can keep having this one-to-camera conversation. If I've talked about any of these before, sorry, I don't remember. Starting in November, we have Blood of Elves by Andrzej Sapkowski. I did really like this book and I rated it 4.5 stars. It's also the last book in the Witcher series that I liked, so I'm gonna pretend that it stopped right there. I have described Blood of Elves and the 2 prequels before this as basically the greatest hits from The Witcher 1 and 2, which are the only 2 that I've watched because I only want to see Henry Cavill on my screen. And if I watch season 3 and I realize that that's the last time I'm going to see Henry Cavill as Geralt, I'm going to be sad. Blood of Elves, Sword of Destiny, and Last Wish are really all that season 1 and 2 is. There's maybe 1 or 2 stories that go into the 3rd season. I don't know. I haven't seen it and I'm not gonna. Following up, we've got Love on the Brain by Ellie Hazelwood. I rated this 4 stars and I'm going to be super honest and say that I don't remember a lot about this one, but I do remember liking it. So there's that. I'd say it's maybe like 3rd on my list. I do remember liking both B and Levi, so that's something worth mentioning, is that I liked both of the leads, so that really pushes it up the ranking. I'd still say that I prefer Deep End and Love Theoretically. I definitely liked Love on the Brain more than The Love Hypothesis. I think that's really like my baseline of like, do I like it more than The Love Hypothesis? Then it's a good Ellie Hazelwood book. Three Dark Crowns by Kendare Blake, I rated 2 stars. I only finished it because I decided I wanted to do a video about it that I haven't started writing, but what else is fucking new? This book was part of the video I did where there was the 3 books and I said, give me 25 pages or 1 chapter, lip sync for your life. Like, give me the best you got and I'll decide if I want to continue reading the book. And I did enjoy the first chapter and I continued reading the book. However, the book is not that good. So the first chapter really drew me in with the whole idea with the 3 sisters who are separated from birth, and then they are trained by respective houses in doing different things. So one of them is a poisoner, the next is a elemental, and then the other is, I don't remember, naturalist, my bad. There is a twist in this that involves someone finding out that they're not who they thought they were, and that was a good twist. But the intermediary part of the book, when it was more of the teenager drama, that wasn't for me. All of the love interests in this book deserve the electric chair, and I say that even though they're like canonically 16. Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, I rated 1.5 stars. Now, I talked about this in my best and worst that I just posted. And what I forgot to mention is that it's not that I thought that Great Big Beautiful Life was bad the entire time I was reading the book. I thought the book was good for a solid like 80%. And then I remember getting to the point in the book where you find out like the reveal of what's actually going on. I audibly said, "Are you effing kidding me?" And like took my headphones off and I put my headphones down, I paused the audiobook. There are so few times in my life where I've ever read a book and I've gotten to the twist that's supposed to blow my mind, where that's supposed to make me emotional or it's supposed to do something. And there's so few times where I've thought to myself, are you kidding? This is it? This is what you're giving me? And I think that's why Great Big Beautiful Life like nosedived really hard for me, is that it had the makings to be not my favorite Emily Henry book, but at least in the top. But it was a Great Big Beautiful failure because of the twist and then the rest of the book, the way it came after that twist. I was not having it. I forgot to say that with Great Big Beautiful Life, we launched into December of 2025. Continuing into December, we have The Stolen Queen by Fiona Davis. There is a genre of book that I wish that we talked about more often that is primarily 95% of the time written by women, and it is a either feminist take on a historical woman, or it is a rediscovering of a historical woman by a woman, giving back the agency to this woman who has been forgotten. If I were to put other books into this category, I'd say that The Lost Apothecary goes into this category, because it is about rediscovering the lost story of a lost woman by a modern woman. And so you have The Stolen Queen, which is a fictional account of the rediscovery of the pharaoh Hatshepsut. I've kind of gone down this rabbit hole where I've been wanting to read books that are either about anthropology or about archaeology. So I've been reading a lot of books that are fictionally about archaeologists or anything like that. So you might see that as a theme, like over the last couple of months. This book is a dual timeline between 1936 and 1978, where in 1936 you have an anthropology student named Charlotte who is in Egypt for a dig, and she falls in love. She gets married, but tragedy strikes and she has to leave Egypt for some reason. And then in the 70s, we are caught up with Charlotte, and then also we meet Annie. And so you have these two characters where one of them has gone through something extremely tragic, and we're kind of unfolding her story on one side. And then on the other side, we have this really young person who is helping this book's version of Anna Wintour put on the Met Gala. And when they do the Met Gala, it's focused on Egyptian artifacts, and then there is a heist and some things are stolen. So you're getting this dual story between the mystery of the artifacts that were stolen from the Met Gala, and then also we're kind of discovering what happened to Charlotte in Egypt 40 years ago. Sorry, I can do math. Because Charlotte still works at the Met in the Department of Egyptian Art, and now she's like the assistant curator of that department. And something that she was studying in Egypt 40 years ago. I'm trying to remember this correctly, but in Egypt, she was studying this idea she had about a woman pharaoh who was wiped from history, and she was specifically talking about this cuneiform tablet that was a tax record or a tax write-off of some sort. The current pharaoh was paying somebody to change some monuments, and she was like, hey, like, I see this pharaoh that is changing monuments from the pharaoh before him. That's really weird and interesting. She has a pretty good, like, hypothesis with a lot of evidence that there was a woman pharaoh that was absolutely wiped out of history. Now, this makes other people in the field with a little bit more credentials than her, as in, like, they have a PhD or they've been heads of departments for a while, and they're men. This does not rub them the right way, but this is basically a feminist retelling of a feminist rediscovery of the pharaoh Hatshepsut. And that is not to its detriment, and that is not me criticizing it. I just find it kind of interesting that we have this whole subgenre of women's fiction. Maybe it is women's fiction, actually, or women's historical fiction. I've thought about doing a video on this concept of this subgenre that I've found. I feel like I could have explained this a lot better, but the book is good. I rated it 4 stars. Following that, we have Funny Story by Emily Henry, which I rated 3.75 stars. I feel like there's going to be a massive personal caveat to this, because while I found the setup of this book to be hysterical and realistic, the main couple in question, but mostly Miles, he reminded me of somebody in my life, or at least a combination of a few somebodies. He was just this amalgamation of all of the men that you have situations with when you are 19 to 21 years old. He is this specimen of man who has told you everything that you want to hear in this moment, and you're nursing a broken heart, and he kind of helps you put it back together. You spend a lot of time together over a couple of months, and then he tells you he's not ready for a relationship. And I can say that with certainty because that shit has happened to me at least twice or 3 times. And I know you're gonna call me a dumb bitch when I say this, but 2 of those instances were with the same guy. Emily Henry was trying to portray him as this, like, really easygoing guy who just liked to hang out with you and just wanted you to be happy. But for some reason, there was just something about him that just put me in a place where I was like, this is reminding me of someone I don't want to remember. But the story itself is very funny. Like, it is a funny story, realistically. So I can't say, like, on its merit that it's a bad book, because it's not. But me rating it 3.75 stars was basically me just cringing the entire way through it because I was experiencing secondhand embarrassment. Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. More like compendium of ways to piss me the fuck off. I unfortunately rated this book 2.5 stars, and it's not because it is like a badly written book or it's a bad third book in a trilogy. It's not that. It's just that I grew exhausted with Emily and her commitment to delusion. Emily Wilde's entire philosophy in life is just, well, I think I could do it, so I'm gonna go do it. And then you have this unreliable narration between a lot of this being written down after the fact, because the entire way that these books are constructed is that they're in a journal format, or at least in an ethnographical format, where you're hearing about things after the fact. So by the time you get to the third book, there's a lot of, yeah, so this happened, I'm writing about it after the fact. And so you're missing a lot of that in the moment emotion of whether you're in a scary situation or you're in a happy situation. If you're recounting it after the fact, you might not be able to recount it accurately. By the time you get to the last book, you just get a lot of, well, it all worked out in the end. And I was like, girl. The main theme of this book is that fairy world does not operate on, say, rules or laws, but it operates on stories. So kind of like a story versus a self-fulfilling prophecy. So there was this underlying story about a fae king who went mad once, and Emily is trying really hard not to let that happen to Wendell. And there's an entire sequence of events that involves like Wendell sacrificing himself, and then she has to bring him back to life. It was like really weird and strange. Emily becomes entirely fascinated by this story of a king that went mad because of something that happened to him that happened to Wendell. So she's like, well, the story was true once, I can't have it happen again. And then every little sequence of events after the fact just made no sense. I feel like me explaining this means absolutely nothing. I'm gonna shut the fuck up because I don't think that I'm properly explaining this. So we're just gonna move on to Mate by Ali Hazelwood, which I rated 3.5 stars. I think I liked it more than I liked Bride, but the overarching politics of it all in this duology, almost said this series, it's a duology. The overarching themes in this duology about the political ramifications of what happens when people and werewolves breed, how that works and everything. I found like the world building to be more interesting in Bride and Mate, at least in Ali Hazelwood's take on it. That's not to say that I don't think that all paranormal romances should follow that same like through line. I just thought that Ali Hazelwood's take on it was kind of interesting. The Witch's Blade by A.K. Mulford, and I have talked about A.K. Mulford on this channel before with reading The High Mountain Court, I believe now 2.5 years ago, and then I also read A River of Golden Bones, and I made a whole video on it because I hated that book a lot. But I can say now that I have finally finished the 5 books in this whole series, but The Witch's Blade is the second one. And if the first book is about our main girl Remy and her falling in love with Hale, the Fae Prince, the second book is about her sister, and her sister ends up falling in love with this like Geralt type. They're out in the frozen north. It's very Geralt, it's very Jon Snow, and I rated it 4.5 stars. I mean, do I really remember a lot of what happened? No. I think that this series would definitely benefit from pointing at pictures on the wall. Maybe I got to be the one to do it. Maybe I just really got to commit to being that girl, is because I have like so many series that I think would do a lot of good being pointed at by pictures on the wall so that you can understand. In the first book, we talked about the Red Witches and about how they have been hunted nearly out of existence. And Remy is actually a Red Witch. She's been in hiding for the past, I don't know how ever long. And she actually turns out to be a lost princess, because of course she is. So her sister is also a princess of sorts. This book kind of divides witches into different colors. So you had like the Red Witches who were able to telepathically move things. They had like the power of animation. And then you had the Green Witches, which were the ones who could make food. The Brown Witches, which were the healers. Purple Witches, who are actually extinct. We have not seen them for a long time. But the Violet Witches were able to make... Their power had to do with like perfumes and oils, as though they were able to enchant smoke or enchant incense. It was something to do with mind control is what they were trying to say. And then the Blue Witches can see the future. So there is a whole plot in here about a bunch of blue witches being driven mad. So they're trying to figure out what's going on with them, because it's kind of like this Scourge in World of Warcraft situation where you have this mysterious figure that they think they know who it is, and they are controlling all of the blue witches with a certain mark on their forehead. So these blue witches are not in control of their own actions, to say the least. So they're trying to figure out what the curse on the blue witches are. And the witch's blade in question is the sword that Rua, or Ruadora is her name. That's the sword that she carries, and it's called the Immortal Blade, I believe. And it is like extremely powerful. It's a relic of some sort. First Time Caller by B.K. Borison, I rated 2.25 stars, mostly because I would not touch this love interest with a 10-foot pole. And that is usually my justification for whether I rate something good or bad when it comes to a romance, is that not only how believable is this love story and how fun is this love story, but would I see myself with this love interest? And no. One other specific criticism I had for this book is that I felt like a lot of the side characters had the same narrative voice. This might be an audiobook problem. You know what? I understand you only have so many voices in your repertoire, so I get it. I was really excited for this book, and when I didn't like it, I was really upset, but I said I'm happy that I read this because the second book sounded much more interesting, and spoiler, but it was a 5-star. Two Can Play by Allie Hazelwood. Now, I know that Ms. Girl wrote like 6 things last year, or at least published like 6 things last year. At least Trad published 6 things, but I mean, sure, why the hell not? The entire premise of this is that there are 2 gaming companies that are kind of competing with each other to see who can produce this game that's about a fictional fantasy series. One of the companies is really good at adaptation and about plot, and the other one is really good at combat. The people who are funding this game to happen really want a combination of both, so they want these 2 gaming companies to collaborate, and by that, they say, let's just go to a ski lodge, and we're all going to get along. And when we can all get along, we'll be able to make this cool, fun thing together. Our 2 characters, Viola and Jessie, they have met several times over the course of their careers because they are both in the gaming industry. And there's been some sort of misunderstanding of whether or not Jessie actually likes Viola, and by that I mean just likes her as a person, because she thinks that Jessie absolutely hates her. And of course, I'm sure that you can guess that he doesn't hate her. He actually had a crush on her the entire time and just kept leaving the room every time she walked in to avoid making a fool of himself, which, I mean, who of us has not done that? But I thought that it was really cute. It's just, I don't know how often I can really read a book that is about the same sort of love interest in my head. Like, I get it, Allie Hazelwood, like, you can write romance really good, but sometimes it's really hard to pick apart the love interests, and sometimes I just really want someone a little bit more unique. So I wonder if after she has published all of the things that she's published in the last year, I could see that Two Can Play actually came out in 2024. I believe I've heard that Allie Hazelwood is taking a little bit of a break. So I wonder if her next big hit is going to be something fantastic. I mean, I would love something in the same universe as like Love Theoretically, but I also loved that book. So the last book I read in 2025 was The Rogue Crown, which is the following book after The Witch's Blade in the 5 Crowns of Okarith, I don't know. I rated this one 3 stars. The 3rd and the 4th book are the LGBTQ plus representation of the 5 books, because A.K. Mulford themselves, I believe, is non-binary and also, I think, bisexual. I'm not sure, don't quote me on that. This is a sapphic romance between a kind of guard figure and a princess, and at the beginning of the story, the queen of this kingdom was assassinated. There is a mystery over who assassinated the queen, and then Lena steps up as a queen, and then Bree is her guard. Now, Bree is a complicated figure in this book because there was a prophecy about her that she would take over the West. And so because she is not part of the royal family, and there was this mysterious prophecy about her taking over the West or something, she was ostracized and exiled from the West a long time ago, but as her position as this kind of mythical twin guard, her twin brother is also this like mythical guy who's like a guard, and he's really important. They're like twins that are prophesized to be really strong and really good at their jobs. So she goes to this kingdom to protect Lena, and shenanigans ensue. And essentially what I didn't like about this is that Lena, the princess in question, she kind of operates like Batman. And what I mean by that, because her mother got murdered, but also before this, she really wanted to deeply understand her people. And it was kind of like Princess Jasmine in the live action Aladdin, where Lena desperately wants to understand her people, because how can she lead a people she doesn't understand? So she goes out on the town at night, disguised, to go talk to people and go hang out with people. And she is also doing some light vigilante work that involves beating up bad men. There's this kind of theme in all of A.K. Mulford's books that you really see it in books 3 and 4, most specifically. Validation of your identity, or validation of the self, that A.K. Mulford very specifically focuses on. So I believe it was in this book, it was when Lena was going after bad men and beating them up because they were beating their wives, and they were approaching these women citizens and basically being like, you matter, you've always mattered, no matter what, you will always matter, people will always care about you. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, is this something that the author needed to hear at some point? And so they are writing this conversation, but also this theme of writing things that they themselves wanted to hear, so they want other people to hear it too. And I thought that was nice. It was something I definitely picked out, where I was like, this seems a little bit of a personal thing to write. And I definitely think that the author has put a lot of themselves in this book series. And I say that with so much compliment, because I legitimately didn't like A River of Golden Bones. And so when I read that after I read The High Mountain Court and before I completed this series. So I was a little bit disappointed with A River of Golden Bones being another exploration of non-binary identity and not liking it. I really enjoyed this book and the other books afterwards for more of the validation angle that the author was going for. That, yes, you matter. Everything about you matters. No one can take that away from you. No one can take your identity away from you. No one can take love away from you, that kind of thing. Is that kind of sappy? Yes. And I don't care. So the two of them are trying to figure out this like secret plot of the witch hunters that are coming out after their family and who assassinated the queen. Bree is there to protect Lena, and they fall in love. Like, of course. But I rated this 3 stars simply because I could not take Lena seriously. Just a little bit. Like I was understanding and respecting the angle that the author was going for, the whole like rescuing other women and then telling them that they matter and that they're important. But Lena being Batman was so deeply unserious, and Bree having to save her multiple times because your mom was just murdered and like people might be out to murder you too. So why are you going out on the town? Like, people know who you are, because Lena's not really doing a very good job disguising herself. She has, I believe, not locks, but I'm not sure. I can't really remember her hairstyle, but I believe she is a black woman. So she has like beads and rings in her hair. So she's not hiding by taking the rings and jewelry out. So when she takes her hood and she like leans back or she leans forward and her hair pokes out, you could see her hair with hair rings on it. And it's like, even Bree figures it out in like 2.5 seconds, because I don't know if you remember, but like your mom was just assassinated, and the way she was assassinated was kind of cool. It was a touching of cutlery. It wasn't the food that was poisoned, it was the cutlery. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting take. I'll take it. So that wraps up 2025. That was the first 12 books I had to talk about. Now I have 26 more to talk about. The River Has Roots by Amal El Motar is a beautiful story about 2 sisters, and I rated this 4.5 stars. Essentially, it is about these 2 sisters who have to sing to the enchanted trees. They have this gift that infuses their voices with magic that helps the trees grow, the enchanted trees. The plot of this story circles around these two sisters, and they sing to their trees every day. And there is one sister who has a fae lover and that they visit across the river. And then the other sister has to marry somebody in the village who is not very nice to her. The theme of this is that death cannot separate even sisters. So it talks about these two sisters who are separated by death. Sorry to spoil it, but these two sisters who are separated by death, but they cannot be separated in spirit or in breath, as they say, because they when one sings, the other is singing with them, even in spirit. I don't have the greatest relationship with my sisters, and that was kind of by design because we didn't really grow up together, and because there is a massive age gap between me and both of them. Actually, there's like a 7 and 11 year age difference, and we did not grow up together. So my relationship with my sisters is honestly not very good. It could be a lot better. When I read a story about these two sisters who are so intertwined in their souls that they cannot even be separated by death itself, that was very heartwarming, and it made me, I don't know, it made me kind of wish that I had that in my life, where at least I wish I was as close to my sister as that. Just the one, though. The Bone Houses by Emily Lloyd Jones. Now, I read The Wild Huntress by Emily Lloyd Jones, and I famously did not like it because I didn't get it. I think that was the main problem, was that I just didn't get it. I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't know the all of the lore of everything that was happening. So I felt like I was plopped in the middle of this prequel or midquel that I didn't really understand. For some of these, for the sake of brevity, I will just stick to my Goodreads review, because now I'm getting to the point where it's like 50 minutes into recording and I'm just like, okay, I have 26 books. I still need to talk about Jesus Christ. The Bone Houses is a very heavy story about family and of grief and what can manifest when we refuse to let our loved ones go. So our main character and her family were grave diggers, and they kind of went out of business because about 15 years ago, the dead stopped being dead and they started to continue to walk among us. And when they become reanimated and they walk among us, they become what is called a bone house, in which they are cursed, semi-intelligent, zombie-like creatures that dwell in the dark forest. And so what I mean by semi-intelligent is that they still kind of know that they were a person once, but they're not really capable of behaving like a person. And lately, at the start of the story, they have started venturing out of the forest and into the village, and they are killing people who then raise from the dead and become more bone houses. Yeah, you get it. So our second main character arrives to town, and he is a map maker, and he pays our main character, Rin, who is about to lose their house due to a greedy landlord, which felt a little bit too real in this economy. But Ellis pays Rin to guide him through the forest because he is on a mission to figure out a cure for the bone houses, or at least to break the curse on the bone houses. I found out afterwards that the bone houses and the several stories that are intertwined in Emily Lloyd Jones' discography, if you will, I found out that they were based in Welsh mythology, which is a mythology that I have been meaning to get around to learning about. So this was just something to push me into reading more about Welsh mythology. The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. This is a book that I put off for a really, really long time. For some reason, I just kept forgetting that I had it on my TBR. I rated it 4 stars. However, my justification for why I rated it 4 stars is not very helpful, because even in my Goodreads review, I said I rated this 4 stars not because I liked it enough to rate it 4 stars, but because the plot, magic, system, exploration of themes, and overall vibe was so unique and refreshing to read that I just cannot justify rating it any less. And then I said I need authors to start trying again, because now that I'm trying to remember the Bone Shard Daughter, and I'm trying to remember everything about this. So The Bone Shard Daughter was about our main character, whose name I can't remember. Lynn. Lynn is her name. Rin was the main character in The Bone Houses, and in The Bone Shard Daughter, it's Lynn. So that's funny. But Lynn is the daughter of the emperor, and he's getting really old, and he's trying to teach her how to do bone shard magic. And bone shard magic involved all of the citizens of the country donating a piece of themselves that could be reanimated later. But the problem is that this irreparably the disabled people, or it took something away from them, because you're literally asking them to donate a part of themselves to become this like
charge complete
army of basically animatronics. And Lynn has amnesia, and she's running out of time to kind of get to the bottom of this bone shard magic, and her father is still pushing her to do even more with it, and she just doesn't get it. But she's also in competition with a rival of hers. And I mean, I'm so sorry, I'm gonna spoil it right now. The big major plot twist was that the reason why Lynn had amnesia is because she herself was a bone construct, and that her father had made her because he was old and he was going to die, so he needed someone after him to continue his empire and to continue with his magic. So that she has to come to terms with the fact that she is a creation of his, and that's the reason why she's not really a full person. The Return of Ellie Black by Emiko Jean. I was really excited to read another book by Emiko Jean because I read, oh my God, The Empress of All Seasons, which was a very good book if you haven't read it yet, The Empress of All Seasons. It wasn't that I wanted to read a book from an author that I've liked previously, but this was a completely different genre of book that I read by Emiko Jean the first time. The Empress of All Seasons is definitely fantasy, so when I saw that Emiko Jean was publishing a mystery and it was a nominee for Reader's Favorite Mystery at the Goodreads Choice Awards, I was like, The Return of Ellie Black is about a girl who disappeared years earlier, and she has resurfaced in the woods in Washington State. Now, I just moved to Washington State, so I was really intrigued by this because I was like, this is kind of, reading about the state I just moved to. And weirdly enough, it is in and about the area that I now live. So I was like, oh, this is kind of like interesting to hear these locations that sound familiar to me now. Ellie Black resurfaces in the woods after 2 years of being missing, and there is a huge mystery as to how she went missing in the first place, why she turned back up now, and what has happened to her in the meantime of everything that's happened. But as they talk to Ellie, she is not really giving a very good picture of what happened to her, and they're all trying to be really understanding of the fact that she's probably undoubtedly been through a hellacious ordeal and that might not want to talk about it. But when more comes to light that there are other girls that disappeared in similar manners and that might be under captivity by whoever kept Ellie, that was very scary for the detectives. Not to be like pro cop in on this YouTube channel for just a minute, but detectives want Ellie to not re-traumatize herself, but they want her to tell them what happened to her so that they can try to rescue the other girls, because there are other girls that went missing. But also the lead detective in charge of this case has more of a personal thing about it because her sister also went missing in a very similar manner, and her sister was never seen again. I did rate this book 5 stars. Ellie and the other girls were kidnapped by religious extremists that forced them to live a certain way in the woods, and there was a guy who thought that he was a prophet, and he wanted multiple wives that of course were all children because he was a sick piece of shit. And Ellie and the other girls were forced to take other pseudonyms. And as some of this starts to become unwound, more questions start to be asked about how Ellie got away to begin with, because she won't even tell them that. She won't even tell them how it is that she ran away or how it is that she escaped. So that's also called into question, not just the fact that her and all these girls were kidnapped by religious extremists, but also how did Ellie escape and why is she not talking about it? Anyway, I rated this book 5 stars because I said sometimes a true crime story comes along that you can't rate subjectively because it says too much, and sometimes it's too hard to ignore when that message is needed, when an author is trying to send a message on purpose. When Among Crows by Veronica Roth, I unfortunately rated it 2.25 stars. I haven't read anything by Veronica Roth in several years, but when I had a booktuber that I watch heavily recommend this duology, I really wanted to give it a try. Unfortunately, I know that the entire bit is that this all takes place over the course of a single night, but number one, I don't remember anything that happened. I'm just going to be so completely honest. I don't remember a goddamn thing about this novella, but And that's why I said that the length of the novella was to its detriment, because I can understand when an author is really trying to write a story on a timeline, or they're really trying to write a story that takes place over a day or 2 days or 3 days, or sometimes you read a book that feels longer than it actually is and you go, wait, this has all only happened over the course of a week. The fact that it was so short was truly to its detriment, because I know nothing about what happened. And I really think that had it been a full-length novel, it would have really given me some added context, context being any context. People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I rated this 4 stars. I believe I read this book before it came out, and honestly, I haven't seen the movie yet, simply because of secondhand embarrassment. I don't know. The thing with People We Meet on Vacation is that it occurs in a bubble, and if that bubble were to occur in real life, some people would probably have a black eye. Yes, I rated the book 4 stars because of the story that it exists in a bubble, but it's not immune to criticism when talking about the fact that these are 2 people, 2 best friends, who go on vacation with each other every summer because they're best friends, despite whatever relationship that they're in, and the 2 of them actively emotionally cheat on their partners. Poppy herself doesn't ever truly emotionally commit. For whatever reason, she is very, very distant from a lot of her relationships. And you kind of think that that's just the way that she is, that she's kind of this like type B forever type of girl, because that's what they are. She's very type B and he's very type A. There's really no deviation between the 2 of them. And you start to really wonder why the 2 of them are even friends in the first place. And sometimes you can befriend somebody not on account of like personality or interests, but also shared experiences, because that's a lot of the root of their relationship, is their shared experiences going on vacation together. And the thing is, yes, it is very cute and believable that 2 best friends that have been best friends for a really, really long time, but who have maybe been harboring feelings for each other, but have like pushed them down because they don't want to ruin their friendship or change anything about their friendship. It is a very possible dynamic that could exist in real life. See, the thing is that you're just setting up everybody in your life for heartbreak, because you are inevitably always going to choose your best friend over your girlfriend or your wife. At least this is in Alex's case, that no matter what, no matter who he's with, most of the time it's just with Sarah, he will always pick Poppy over Sarah. And that should have been your first clue that there was more going on. End of it all, 10 years later, the 2 of them have just wasted a lot of time, theirs and other people's. It was a good book. Okay, it's okay. Again, it is a good book in a bubble. It is a 4-star book in a bubble. If this was happening to me in real life, I would probably punch somebody in the face. And I've never been in a fight in my life. So I would probably hit them because I would take them by surprise. A Guarded Treasure by May Lovett. I finished this book on my birthday, and that is at the detriment of my health. I don't know why. I keep reading bad books on my birthday, or bad books that come out on my birthday. I need to breathe. So this book is essentially The Mummy, but they fuck. And what I mean by that is that the main character's name is Edith Taylor, and Benjamin Brooks is the name of the American hunky man. Just to refer to my Goodreads review for the sake of not losing my ever fucking mind. The Mummy, but they fuck, and it's the most deeply sexist, misogynistic, worthless, stupid, incomprehensible, anachronistic nonsense you've ever encountered. They boinked after like 2 days, declared their love after 3, basically copied the entirety of the plot of The Mummy, specifically with the whole Evie is the descendant of blank thing, and also her name is Edie instead of Evie. Like, what the fuck are we doing? I'm literally gonna have a mental breakdown. There were so many notes that I had on this book because there were a lot of references or instances where the author was writing about something anachronistic in history. And there was one thing in particular about they talked about Libya, or they talked about a country in Africa, and I was just like, wait a minute, I don't think that was a country at the time they think it was. So I was like going back and I was like, this person didn't even do the proper research. I mean, she didn't do a lot. Specifically with stuff that you could easily Google. You might want to know when a country was founded or when a certain technology was invented if you're going to talk about it in your book. I need to move on. I rated that book 1 star, and it's probably one of the worst books that's ever happened to me. Unfortunately, I read The Time of Contempt by Andrzej Sapkowski afterwards because I thought to myself, I'm going to read a book from The Witcher because I know it's going to turn around. I know I'm going to like this better than what I just read. I know I'm going to have a good time. Unfortunately, I was so wrong. I don't know if this is a mistranslation. I don't know if this is how the book was written, but the number of times that certain phrases get repeated in this book was more ridiculous because the word was contempt. And that's not really a word that a lot of people use in like common speech. I actually searched it. The word contempt was mentioned in this book 43 times. 43 times. The main problem with this book is that we're really getting into the meat and potatoes of everybody wanting to have a kid with Ciri. Everybody in this fucking book series wants to fuck poor Ciri, including her own father. Now, I will give the author a little bit of grace and a little bit of forgiveness when I do remind the audience that Andrzej Sapkowski never once really said that a father wanting to fuck and breed with his biological daughter was a good thing. In fact, this was a secret very closely kept for the majority of the series from Ciri herself. Like, we know it, and I think Geralt knows it, but Ciri herself, I don't think ever maybe finds out that that's her actual biological father. I'd really have to re-look into that. It's really hammered home that Ciri at no point ever should ever be setting foot in Nilfgaard. It's like she could be literally anywhere else except Nilfgaard, because Nilfgaard is the ultimate enemy at the end of the series, but also the king is her biological father. Like, it's just like it's snuck in there. It's like it's a little caveat. You know what I'm saying? I don't even think I'm slowly going insane. I think I'm already there. But more than anything, Ciri just being treated like breeding stock, which I understand is like the entire point, but like I just got tired of it. I just got so tired. She's kidnapped every chapter, and every time there's somebody wanting to assault her, and then they're told not to. They're like, no, don't touch her, because she's really important, like, to the world and to the plot. She's really important, don't touch her. She's like, her getting pregnant is the last thing that we want until it is with the person that is most convenient for us. But I think what made me the most angry about this whole like repeated assaulting of Ciri the entire time, whether she's being kidnapped or she's being threatened with assault, or by the end where she's getting overtly assaulted. Let me refer to my Goodreads review. But at the very end, Ciri is assaulted anyway twice. So she is rescued by the Rats, I believe that they're called. It's like a group of roving teenagers that commit petty crime, and they just kind of stick together because they're all either orphans or runaways, and they all kind of stick together as this like one big found family. So Ciri is kidnapped, and she meets someone in custody named Kayle, spelled Kayle. IGH, and Kayle is a boy, he, him. During custody, Ciri is threatened with assault, and then afterwards, after they escape, Kayle is just like, you're safe now with me, and now you're not. Another girl in the group, her name is Mistle. Mistle, they also say, like, from the get-go, Mistle was also a victim of rape and sexual assault. So Mistle is just like, hey, don't touch her. You leave her alone. She's gone through enough. At the end, Mistle assaults Ciri. So the whole book, Ciri is like escaping being assaulted, and then she ends up in custody with a boy who she escapes with, who then tries to assault her, and then she's saved by a girl who assaults her. But at the end, it's like Mistle is different. If that is the introduction to me, or at least the audience finding out that Ciri might be gay, you've lost me. I was so out of my mind. I was so out of my fucking mind. I was like reading the Wikipedia page for the rest of the books because I was just like, I know enough. I have seen enough. I have listened to enough. I know enough. I don't need to know anything else. And then at the very end, when I got to the end, and it's just like, yeah, like, Geralt gets stabbed and Yennefer tries to save him, and then she kills herself accidentally using too much power trying to save him, and then they all end up with King Arthur in Camelot. And I was just like, you know what? Slay. Thanks. That's all I needed to know. I don't need to read the next 3 books. I can just play the games and shut the fuck up. Like after Blood of Elves, this book series stops mattering to me. By this point, I was in a drought. By this point, I was fucking begging. I was fucking begging for some good fucking food. And then I read Girl Dinner by Olivia Blake, which delivered some good fucking food. Thank God. I'm going to be so for real and say that this might be a personal take because I love Olivia Blake so much. If I really sit here and think about it, I think that Gifted and Talented and Girl Dinner really are up there as my favorite Olivia Blake books. Girl Dinner by Olivia Blake. How do I explain this? I know cannibalism bad, but what if cannibalism good? In like a Dexter only kills bad people way. And when you do that and you do like the magical like cannibalism sacrifice in which you only kill bad people in a Dexter sort of way, what if doing that like fixes all of your problems, like clears your skin and gives you a successful career and makes you really hot and skinny? In a universe where we trade one bad man for the benefits that career women often must live without. And what I mean by that is that in ways where career women are often forced to prioritize being a mother or prioritize their children or forced to prioritize anything but themselves or their own happiness, whether that be in their career or how they look or anything. In ways where career women are stifled from choosing their own selfishness and their own selves over other people, what if by eating a bad man over the course of a 7-course dinner, what if you could just eat him and then absorb all of the things that men have had all along, which is the ability to choose themselves? In a world where I have been constantly barraged with experiences, realizations, and lessons about womanhood and feminism, including reanalyzing myself and hearing very necessary criticisms and perspectives other than my own since, I don't know, 15 or 16, it can all feel like you're laying flat on the floor and staring at the ceiling, wondering if anything will ever change, if anything ever has changed, and whether your position in life is one of conformity or challenging conformity. But all you know right now is that you are so tired and you have to go to work in the morning. And yeah, maybe you'll get a little treat on the way to work because it'll make you feel better because you deserve it. I think the quintessential experience of reading Girl Dinner is that you need to watch Barbie first. It's in like the same Venn diagram. There's Barbie and then there's Girl Dinner. It's kind of in the same category. This book is really fucking good. Unfortunately, I was continuing a trend, so Not in Love by Allie Hazelwood. I rated 2 stars. I hated this because I hated the main girl, Rue. If there's one thing I dislike more than a creepy love interest I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, it's a main character I'm supposed to find charming or lovable, even if they're rough around the edges. Rue only does one-night stands, and guess what? This relationship breaks the cycle. She's an emotionally devoid piece of cardboard doing a not like other girls impression to the 9th degree. She's the I can fix her girl, and I gotta tell you, she doesn't need to be fixed. She needs to be left alone. She's that friend who sucks the oxygen out of the room, but you've been friends since the 3rd grade, so you're used to suffocating in her presence. Ick, absolutely not. But Eli, I liked him. So like this is an instance where I liked the love interest, but I did not like the main character. The next 2 are very heavy hitters, but we've got Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab, which I rated 4.5 stars. The thing with this book is that it rotates between 3 characters, and all 3 characters embody something different in their vampirism. So all 3 characters are vampires over the course of the story, but the things that they hunger for are different. Maria embodies hunger, Charlotte embodies love, and Alice embodies life. So Maria, or later Sabine, her quest in vampirism is inspired by her desire to want more out of life. So she's born in poverty and then seeks to marry up, and she's always seeking more because she wants more out of life. So everything about her quest in vampirism is quenching a hunger that never ends because she always just wants more control, more blood, more life, more anything, because she's always trying to fill this void inside of herself that never gets full. Charlotte later falls for this, and she ends up in the most toxic, immortal lesbian relationship ever. Lottie embodies love because the reason why she chooses vampirism and the reason why she chooses Sabine is that She dares to love a woman, and she cannot stomach marrying a man to the encouragement of society's wills. Charlotte was in, I believe, Georgian England, and she just could not stomach marrying a man. She was like, absolutely fucking not. I cannot marry a man. She couldn't live with it. The whole like lavender marriage thing wasn't going to work for her. She just could not stomach the idea of being married to a man, and she was in love with her best friend. So she chose vampirism with Sabine because at least she could leave that life. So she chose that to escape, and because in that life she could freely love a woman. Unfortunately, that woman sucked, literally and figuratively. I did like her story the most because she was in love with her best friend, and when sorry, I'm spoiling it, but her best friend ends up marrying her brother and has a very happy life, all things considered. And so like she goes back later, and it's just a really touching reunion between two characters that loved each other for their whole lives, but the way that they chose to live their lives is completely different because Charlotte just absolutely refuses, and she ends up becoming a vampire to escape society. But Jocelyn, on the other hand, does what Lottie can't, and that is stomach marrying a man and living by society's rules. Because do you have another choice? Did Jocelyn ever know she had another choice? That's the other thing. I really wanted to like Alice because her entire story is that she is in a perpetual state of grief because her mom died when they were really young, when her and her older sister were still children, but she was young enough that she was not able to stomach the grief better than her sister, but she had a lot less deep, strong memories of her mom than her sister did. Her sister never gets over it when their father remarries, and like their stepmom is a really nice person. Like by all accounts, they have a really nice stepmom who is not seeking to replace their mother in any way or is not seeking to like append anything. Like she just wants to be there for the girls and just wants to be a person who loves them, which I think is the best way to have a step parent. So Alice is in college. She is in this perpetual state of grief between her mother and her sister, and then she is also a lesbian with social anxiety. So she goes out to a party and she hooks up with a girl for the first time, and then she wakes up a vampire. All in all, this is a deeply good book. This is such a good book. I know not everybody likes V.E. Schwab, but I fear this might be her best work. I needed to take a drink of liquid IV, and I need to take a deep breath before I talk about Katabasis by R.F. Kuang. And I poured a lot of my heart into my review, so I will be reading it for you. This and Babel are one of my favorite books of all time. I legitimately think like they're an academic's Bible. Things that these books talk about that you could not synthesize in a lab. The way that R.F. Kuang writes as an academic, and then you also read this as an academic, you feel as though you're being spoken to on a level that you've never found before. As somebody who gave her entire soul to academia, flourished in undergrad, then experienced difficulties in graduate school, including but not limited to the pandemic, mental health issues, money issues, financial uncertainty, questioning everything, and realizing that I was not talented enough to achieve the success I desired. The truth is, the intended audience of this book are the academics, the graduate students, the PhD candidates, the people who were told that their thesis ideas weren't interesting enough, the lab assistants being held hostage by their advisors, the students whose advisors are unwilling to part with their free or reduced labor that it would take to have their candidates teach their undergrads instead of them, the students waiting for their advisors to give their rough drafts back and then spending all night with a Little Caesars pizza and a case of Red Bull fixing all the errors, the students that slept in the graduate student study lounge, the students who were told if you are in a relationship now, you won't be by the end of this program, the students who lose financial aid because they are no longer considered dependents of their parents after they turn 23, the students reliant on bad university healthcare and then end up in the ER with stress-induced cholecystitis, but you have to put off getting your gallbladder removed until you reach a stupidly high deductible, the students whose advisors pass them on to other professors because your research topic doesn't perfectly align with their expertise, the students who feel inferior to their peers because they understand a concept more than you, the constant comparison to your peers and making yourself smaller by your own voice because you are so used to being talked down to that you do it to yourself, questioning whether at the end of this you'll even love this field enough to pursue it as a career, and whether this experience has soured you forever, whether you'll even get a job, whether a new presidential administration comes in and cuts all the jobs because they're considered non-essential. You have Alice, a young woman who goes on long-winded rants against feminism, but mostly the parts of feminism that some might consider performative, like history being herstory or CEO, girl boss type of performative feminism. But she still holds a lot of internalized misogyny. She actively chooses to allow her advisor to pursue her sexually, and then she second guesses herself and rejects him, and then he spurns her, and then she goes, no, wait, maybe I should have let him do that to me. And then he doesn't treat her the same at all for the rest of her time with him, and she cannot get the same attention back from him. Like, how sick is that? To go along with sexual harassment, which is prevalent in these spaces anyway, because it suits you to do so, and then you turn your nose up at other women who do the exact same thing. Alice literally goes on long-winded rants about how other women in academia do the exact same thing, like sleep with their advisor, and then when she tries to do that and then second guesses herself and backs out, and then he treats her differently after the fact, she realizes why people do it in the first place, but also what happens when you don't do it and you're punished for it. She is desperate for success, constantly comparing herself to Peter. She constantly looks down at the other women around her, knows that her relationship to her advisor could very well be the difference between poverty and finding a good job. That is real. That is so real. She ignored the warnings about her advisor and actively discouraged conversations pertaining to his inappropriate behavior with students. Like, she was a Me Too critic, all because she wanted the success and she believed herself to be different, that she didn't have to use patriarchy to get where she wants to be, and only for her to find out that she was wrong, that she's not special. Her inflated sense of self is completely destroyed from the inside out. Hearing other students' stories and realizing that she was just another stop in a pattern of behavior from a man who did more sexual harassment than magic. She only decides to put an end to this only after spending a massive chunk of the book still defending him and still believing that her soul is worth it for her. The only way that they can get her advisor back from the underworld is if she sacrifices part of her own lifespan to bring him back. Like 10 years of her life or something, she has to cut 10 years off of her lifespan to bring him back from the dead. And the entire time she's going there, she's continuing to justify that decision and why she wants to do that, only to then realize, like, this was never worth it to begin with. The other character, Peter, is kind of a burned out, gifted kid, using your sense of aloofness to create this air that everything is beneath you, leaning on your laurels because people will let you get away with laziness and not respecting the social fabric if you're impressive enough. The thing with being impressive from birth is that that's what's expected from you all the time now. Chronic illness doesn't care if you have a term paper to write, and not prioritizing your body can actually kill you. So Peter lives with chronic illness, and I believe he lives with Crohn's disease, I think. Something that flares up infrequently throughout his life, but he kind of ignores it for the sake of living like a normal person. And when it catches up to him, he's unable to make it to exams, or he's unable to perform as well in school. And then everyone's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? Like, you're usually better than this. Peter chooses being magnificent, a burning star threatening to burn out early, over managing his chronic illness. The world did not stop for him when he needed it to, and suddenly he's forever playing catch up, something all of us know all too well. A unmedicated version of me would have been weeping and sobbing and crying over this book because it said everything to me that I not necessarily needed to hear, but needed to hear from an evil voice. I understand I did things that were wrong too, and I understand I was not perfect either, but I mean, for fuck's sake, not all of it was my fault. Being so hard on myself really isn't justified. I mean, yes, I should be hard on myself for certain things, but like a lot of it was out of my control. Unfortunately, I ended up reading a bastardization of Babel after I read Katabasis, Blood over Bright Haven. I hated this book. I rated it 1 star. This is a bastardization of Babel if I ever saw one. In fact, it ends the exact same way, with the main character sacrificing themselves to destroy Babel or the Magicenter in this book. This is a white savior and noble savage story that attempts to ride Babel's coattails, and it does absolutely nothing more. This book is about Siona. She is an orphan, and for as long as she could live, she has wanted to be the first woman ever admitted to the high magistracy. And then she finally gets there only to discover that just because she as a woman was inducted for the first time to be amongst these very powerful men, it didn't exactly make sexism and misogyny not exist. Her having to be forced to deal with all of it, she didn't really expect. And her new colleagues stop at nothing to remind her that she is unwelcome, starting with the fact that as a lab assistant, they gave her a janitor who is an immigrant. And the thing with this janitor who was once not a janitor is that 10 or so years ago, he crossed the barrier into this oasis, not oasis, and not even just like a literal sense, but there's a barrier, and outside the barrier it's the blight, and the blight literally explodes you from the inside. And all of his family died. So 10 years ago that happened, and then he miraculously survived the blight and ended up somewhere safe. But his entire family, minus I believe his niece, are dead. And the only reason why his niece survived is that for some reason there was a law surrounding not separating parents and children, which sounded apt. But there was a rule that if they were a parent and a child, that you couldn't separate them. So he posed his niece as his daughter. Unfortunately, you could put Siona in Blood Over Brighthaven and Alice from Katabasis in a Venn diagram situation in which they share similar traits surrounding believing that patriarchy will work for them because they're different, or encountering misogyny and thinking that it is beneath them to look favorably on other women. Is another example of a really obnoxious and insufferable woman that is written to be feminist only until the benefits of patriarchy suit her. She's kind of giving white woman who calls 911. There was also this like side quest. So come to find out, the portal magic that they were all kind of using to like channel energy from outside, they thought it was like pulling from like this nether or from this like different place that didn't really exist. But in actuality, they were draining the life from people who lived outside the barrier. So like the nomadic people that Tamil was that live outside the barrier, who are like trying to escape from the blight and not die via being blown up. So it turns out it's kind of inflicted by the Magicenter because and I don't even care that I'm talking about this. So they're essentially draining the life from the indigenous people of the land and then using it to power their own stuff. And Siona kind of comes to terms with the fact that they are not only colonists, but they are also engaging in genocide. Instead of, you know, trying to figure out how to not do that, Siona has a mental breakdown, and it launches into this side quest or this like side tangent that was so fucking wild that I had to like stop the book for a while. Siona like has a full mental breakdown over the fact that everything she knew was a lie, and that everything she had ever trained for was a lie, and everything she was doing was actually hurting people. And she's having a mental breakdown, and her aunt and her cousin are kind of her ops, and they say like, yeah, we did all the womanly chores around the house so that Siona could focus on being the first woman mage to ever be inducted into the High Magistrate or whatever the fuck. And they kind of low-key resent her for that. Like I said, they're kind of her ops. They go, she's having a mental breakdown. So they call what is in this universe a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist basically says like, we should do to her what is in this universe a lobotomy. So they're like, okay, if she doesn't come back from whatever brink she's walked herself up to, we have to lobotomize her. And so Siona snaps out of that long enough to say, I want you to lock me and the psychiatrist in a room, and then I'm going to hold him hostage in this room while I talk through everything that is in my brain. I'm going to unspool the thread in my mind over everything that's happened over the course of the book to kind of rationalize everything in my brain over what I need to do next. Because I'm obviously going to like save everybody now, and I'm obviously going to do something about it. She like jumps back to being lucid, and she's just like, okay, so you, psychiatrist, are going to sit there and you're going to listen to me talk about all of these things, and you think I'm a silly little woman, so this is probably just gibberish, or you think that this doesn't matter, and you're gonna listen to me, and you're gonna give me your honest to God opinion. If you get out of the chair that you're sitting in, I'm gonna jump out of this window. You're gonna be my sounding board, or I'm gonna kill myself. How is that going to help anybody? Babe, how is that going to help literally anybody? I'm so, like, it's obvious she's calling his bluff, but like, how the fuck is that helping anything whatsoever? And then I just went on this like long tangent about why I'm tired of reading women like Siona, which again, Siona and Alice from Katabasis are in this like Venn diagram situation where they share traits with each other. They are drastically different in practice and in motion, and being inside their heads is drastically different. I am so tired of women in fantasy being presented as the smartest woman alive as she stumbles over all of her words, fails to adequately stand up for herself, pauses before responding to anybody harassing her, chooses the worst possible dialogue options literally available ever, and being completely inept concerning the social fabric. Siona is such a dumb fucking bitch that she thought she was stuck in the library for 2 days because she got stuck reading a book and was so engrossed by this book that she thought a full 48 hours had passed, and she asked the people around her in a panic, like, what time is it? Like, what day is it? Like, and she looks like a crazy idiot. She looks insane. Siona is a bumbling idiot that feeds into every stereotype that some men have for women. Conversationally incoherent, incapable of intelligent thought when challenged outside of a few how dare yous. Just if the only thing you could respond when somebody says stuff to you is how dare you. Not paying a single ounce of attention to anything going on because it's not as important as what's inside of her smooth brain. I find this type of character deeply insulting and unfeminist because somehow we have gotten out of the era of the type A, girl boss, CEO, I can handle my shit. For some reason, we've entered the era of the spacey, incoherent, my time is better than yours. I'm not going to take the time to explain anything to any of you people, much less the readers of this book that are inside my head. I haven't earned my place, but give it to me anyway. And worst of all, I'm different from other women because I'm less aggressive about women's rights and I will accept patriarchy when it suits me. These types of characters talk down to you, and I hate that because Alice, I felt like, wasn't talking down to me personally. She was talking down about the other women around her and knew full well what the fuck she was doing. These are the women in your life that tell you not to shout too loudly about feminism, women's rights, patriarchy, or any issue that you find dear to your heart because they believe that your passion is aggression. More than that, is that they believe that you are the cause of a rapidly closing door. What I mean by that is that characters like Siona say to other women, don't be too loud about feminism or about change because the establishment will shut the door before I can enter it. Because at the end of the day, a woman like Siona is only out for herself. She wants to be the first and only woman mage. I absolutely fucking hated her. Could not fucking stand her. One of the worst protagonists I've read recently. The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. This is such a good book. I love it when authors try. I'm so fucking fascinated when I read a book that is so different, when I can read a book and it feels like nothing I've ever read before. I rated this book 5 stars, is absolutely immaculate. So imagine you are a girl boss scholar at the House of the Raven, and every 24 years, the ruler of your empire steps down and there is a competition where one challenger from each of the 8 houses competes to be the next ruler. So there's 8 houses. They're all after different animals. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but one of them is the House of the Raven, the House of the Fox, etc. So you have a frenemy, which is another girl who has routinely humiliated you, and she's called you fat, ugly, and poor for the last however long, and she's chosen to be the next Raven contender. And you're like, you know what? That's cool. Like, more power to her. Like, I don't want her to be in charge, but good for her, I guess. However, then your frenemy is murdered. And because you were her frenemy, you are afraid that someone will pin her murder on you. So you go to the ruler yourself and you tell them what you suspect. So you tell them like, hey, I think there's a conspiracy afoot to pin the blame on somebody else because something's not adding up. Like, I don't know why my frenemy would be assassinated, but it certainly wasn't me, even though some people might argue that it was, but it definitely wasn't. And the ruler, who has to now deal with the fact that one of the contenders for his throne has now been murdered brutally, says to the main character, you know what, Queen, you're so right. In fact, now that you're the Raven contender, you're gonna have so much time on your hands to like solve this murder that I'm personally assigning as your personal quest. You need to figure out what happened because this can't happen again. But like now you're the Raven contender and you're one of the 8 people who could rule this empire, because surely somebody who could like figure out what happened is surely capable enough to rule a nation, country, empire. And the girl boss goes, I'm the what? I'm the what now? And also your situationship, who you haven't seen in a really, really, really long time, is also here, and he's one of the other 8 contenders, and yearning ensues because you guys haven't seen each other in a long time because of a misunderstanding. This was already unique and crazy. It's so fun. But what I found even more enjoyable was the fact that the book was actually hysterical. So the 8 in question of the 8 houses, they're all animals, and they are more or less gods that take the likeness of these animals. And everyone says that they don't exist like on this plane, because if they did, there would be way too much magic floating around. They're like, yeah, we pray to the 8, and we also pray that they never return. They're like, yeah, like we pray to them, but we don't want them like around. We just want them to be like wherever, but not here. Except they are on this plane like all the fucking time. Like all of the 8 are just everywhere all the time, all at once. They're more or less specters that only exist to the people that they want to see them, and they're very persistent, very loud, and very annoying. They also have the ability to literally crawl inside your skin at any given moment, and they can speak in your head at the exact same time. So what this looks like in practice is that our main girl, Nima, from the House of the Raven, she ends up getting in touch with one of the ravens from the House of the Raven, and this raven has been kicked out of the flock. So he is a solitary raven, and he's kind of sad because he has no flock and he has no family. And Nima, to the best of her ability, is trying to find out what happened to her frenemy, right? To the best of her ability, she's trying to figure it the fuck out. And the solitary raven that she comes upon, that only appears to Nima, by the way, because these are more or less gods that like wander around. The raven will just crawl inside Nima's skin at any given moment, and then will just be like, hello, you're going the wrong way. Hello, don't you want to go look at that thing over there? And oh my God, why aren't you listening to me? And nobody listens to me. I'm the solitary raven. I have no flock. My life is meaningless. I'm just a little raven, and nobody ever listens to me. I'm just a little raven. I'm just a little guy. Why won't you listen to me? And you're walking around with this raven in your chest that's just like, hey, I think you should like go check out that thing over there. Like that seems like a really good thing for you to check out. And you're just like, oh my God, will you please shut the fuck up? Like, please leave me alone. And it's so... like the whole, I was giggling the whole entire time. It was such a good, enjoyable, and funny read. I think this might be one of the best books I've read this year. It definitely earned its 4.41 on Goodreads, that's for sure. Immortality, a love story. I rated 2 stars. I really did not like this book. I really did not like it. And it might be because I was coming back to it 2.5 years later. Frankly, this goes into a category of sequel that I would call could be an email. The start of the story is that there is a woman who tried to induce her own abortion, and she shows up on death's door at Hazel's house. Like, she is very obviously not going to survive, and Hazel saves her life by completing the abortion safely. Unfortunately, even though she saved this woman's life, at this time in England, there were really restrictive abortion laws at the time. We find this out after the poor woman that Hazel saved is threatened with jail time if she doesn't throw Hazel under the bus. Thankfully so, she was bailed out of jail by the future King George IV, current Prince Regent. He seeks out Hazel because of his daughter, Charlotte, because she has been ill for years and she won't see the royal doctors. So he believes that having a lady doctor will make his daughter open up and they can figure out what is wrong with her. So this was an interesting premise, but one thing you'll find out about me is that I cannot let historical anachronisms go, like fucking ever. Hazel bonds with Princess Charlotte and discovers that Charlotte is not sick, but she's faking all of her illnesses to avoid social gatherings because she does not want to be married off. Now, the historical interpretation was kind of loose here. I did a lot of research on Princess Charlotte. The real Princess Charlotte interacted with a lot of the same royals that were mentioned in this novel, including William, Prince of Orange, who I believe is that's the Netherlands. She was engaged to him in the book and in real life, but in both she did not end up marrying him. So the real Princess Charlotte, I'll put her picture up somewhere, endured extensive parental abuse at the hands of her separated parents, and there were a gaggle of servants that turned a blind eye to Charlotte spending time with her mother, which was something that her father forbade. That was something that she was not allowed to do, was to spend time with her mother. And she begged and begged and begged for years, and she was finally able to marry Prince Leopold, who was the first king of the Belgians, and she loved him very deeply. It was a love match. But unfortunately, she did die in childbirth at age 21. Records show that she was beloved in England, and she was believed to be the future of the monarchy. So that's what we know historically speaking. But let's bring us to fictional Princess Charlotte. The book tells us that Charlotte is lying about being sick because she is in love with her lady's maid, and Hazel immediately jumps to help Charlotte fake her death so that she can run away with Eliza, the lady's maid. I found this extremely romantic, but I didn't really like the way that it affected the story. So what we learned in book one, sorry to spoil book one, is that Jack, Hazel's love interest, was saved from the gallows because of a immortality elixir that was introduced in book one that saved him from the gallows, and he survived. Now, Hazel, at this point in the second book, did not know that Jack survived, but she wasn't sure if the immortality elixir was real or not. So in book two, like, they get reunited and she finds out that this immortality elixir is in fact real. They find the origin of this immortality elixir, and it is just a bunch of writers and philosophers that are in real life that are famous, and they're just like in a room sitting drinking wine talking about life, and they are just immortal. And one of them is Lord Byron, and I believe another was like Aristotle or some shit like that. I was so taken aback by all of this. I said, I thought this was about Princess Charlotte. Why is Lord Byron here? They're a secret society of immortal beings that are influencing politics. They're like pulling the strings. They're like the immortal Illuminati. I guess TLDR, Hazel saves a woman and goes to jail, gets bailed out of jail to help the princess who in real life died in childbirth. But in the book, it's because she's gay. That's why. She's not sick. She's gay. Hazel helps her run away, which book one Hazel would never do, because book one Hazel would have been like, I'm going to choose my career over literally anybody. But she is so taken by this love story of Princess Charlotte and her gay lady's maid that she says to herself, I'm going to sacrifice everything and I'm going to help you escape. Even though if I fail, I'm going directly back to jail. Girl, I just felt like this didn't match the character's identity, which finding out that the immortality elixir from book one was actually real and that Jack was now immortal and Hazel was like trying to decide if she herself should become immortal was like this whole thing. So I guess like any actions she took didn't really matter because she was grappling with this idea of whether she should become immortal too, and thus nothing matters because she could just run away. I was baffled. I was like, this is not only where you led us in book two, but now this is a duology and this is where you leave us? This is where you left us. I am still at the restaurant. However, one thing Dana Schwartz did do, which I found really interesting, was that she solved the mystery of the madness of King George III by implying that his madness was a result of arsenic poisoning. And this is a theory that actually has historical merit because analyses of his hair show that he had lots and lots and lots of arsenic in his body. So I was cool with that, and I thought it was a really interesting change that in their time, they were able to figure out that arsenic in the wallpaper was making the king go mad. I mean, if they only could have figured that out, if that was really what happened, I mean, maybe the course of history, including the American Revolution, wouldn't have happened the way that it did. But still, it was a very interesting take. The Evergreen Heir by A.K. Mulford, which is the fourth book in the 5 Crowns of Oakyrith. I'm just going to say Oakyrith. I also rated this book 3 stars, so I rated it the same as the Rogue Crown. And in hindsight, I think I liked the Rogue Crown more. How do I say this? So The fourth book is about the protagonist Nilo and Talhan. And Talhan, or Tal, is Bree's brother, who's the other like mythical like guard character. And Nilo is the heir to the Southern Court. They tell you straight from the jump in several books ago that Nilo is non-binary, assigned female at birth. There is also a reference in this book to Nilo permanently sterilizing themselves so that they cannot have children. But Nilo is the heir to the Southern Court, and the Southern Court has a drug problem. And the queen is like smoking herself into oblivion, and Nilo is trying their best to not only save their country, which is overtaken by this drug problem, but also save their mother, because Nilo is not ready to be the ruler of this court and wants their mother to not die from a drug problem. Unfortunately, the reason why I rated this 3 stars is that while I have so much love and respect for the author wanting to write their own personal gender and sexuality journeys into their books, I unfortunately found Nilo to be really annoying. And I mean that with so much love. It has nothing to do with them being non-binary. I thought that was done extremely well, actually. I thought that the whole non-binary identity aspect was done really well here, as opposed to A River of Golden Bones, which I felt was done really badly. At least in this book, nobody is openly transphobic, which is kind of nice, because in A River of Golden Bones, the villain is a TERF. So it was kind of cool that I got to read a book about a non-binary person who was not being discriminated against for being non-binary. They were just annoying. There were even instances where there was like an opening for someone to be transphobic. Nilo would get really defensive, and they would just be like, well, this is just how I dress, and this is just how I am. And it's like, respectfully, gender neutral girl implied. Nobody was criticizing you. They were just saying, why are you wearing all black and long sleeves? Because you live in the South and it's really, really, really hot. So like, we're not criticizing you for not wearing like what other females assigned at birth wear, but like, we're saying, aren't you hot? Aren't you a little warm in that? And Nilo's just like, no, as they're sweating. And I'm like, it was nice again to read a book with a non-binary person who has already gone through their gender journey and has already gotten to this point. And there was no, like, I don't want to say no, because maybe I'm misremembering, but there wasn't any that I remember instances of transphobia or anyone being hateful towards Nilo for their non-binary identity. They were just, unfortunately, annoying. So after I read a lot of fantasy, I desperately needed something really fucking silly. So I looked to see what was going on in the world of historical romance, because I have not been there in quite some time. So Tessa Dare is an author that I was familiar with through other people talking about her online for writing really good historical romances, but good, sexy historical romances. So the entire plot of this book is kind of a reverse Cinderella. So Emma shows up at the Duke of Ashbury's door because the Duke of Ashbury was supposed to get married, and the girl that he was supposed to get married to asked Emma to make her dress, and it was a really, really, really ugly dress. And then the wedding got called off, and Emma never got paid. So she showed up at the Duke of Ashbury's door wearing that wedding dress and said, hey, your ex-fiance was supposed to pay me, and this dress cost like a lot of money, and it took me a lot of time to make, and it's really ugly. So if you could just get it off my hands, that would be great. He goes, wait a minute, I need to get married, and this really attractive seamstress who has all of her teeth and speaks the king's English, so I need to get married. And she literally showed up in a wedding dress. So she was actually a vicar's daughter. She was basically the daughter of a priest, and she was kicked out of her house, raised in the gentry, come to find out. So he was like, oh, you're a vicar's daughter, I can marry you, and you literally showed up on my doorstep in a wedding dress. And Emma is just like, are you well? Did you hit your head? Are you good? Like, I just showed up on your doorstep. But he just wants to get with her for marriage reasons, and he just wants to have an heir with her. But she's like, no, we're gonna have dinner together every night, and we're gonna talk to each other, and then I'll give you a kid. But like, my part of this deal is that you're going to attempt to like me. What could possibly go wrong? I'm just now remembering this detail that I found really funny, but Ash's wedding to the other girl, the first one, was canceled because he is covered in scars from being in the war, and the war being the Revolutionary War with America, and he called it the Rebellion, which was so fucking funny. And maybe that's just me, like, I've just never heard of the American Revolution called the Rebellion before, but I giggled. I thought it was very funny. Empire of Shadows by Jacqueline Benson. This is, again, another example of I just wanted to read a book that had archaeology in it. And unfortunately, as this book series is actually called The Raiders of the Arcana, this is essentially the Temple of Doom meets the Mummy. This time, our main character's name is Ellie. So it's not Evie or Edie, it's Ellie. My God, what kind of train am I on and how the fuck do I get off of it? I did like this book more and I rated it 3.25 stars. I thought Ellie was a much better character, at least in the very beginning. And she is arrested because she was picketing or she was with the suffragettes because she's fighting for women's rights, and she got arrested. She got framed for stealing some documents. And so she said, well, I hear some bad guys are after these documents and after these maps. So I just gotta go find the thing that they want first. So it's literally Raiders of the Lost Ark. In the very, very specific category of The Mummy meets Indiana Jones, this one just kind of gets a like it's not bad. I am not going to continue reading the rest of the series. Maybe I could be, I'll never say never. Like, maybe I could be convinced someday, but I was not really like chomping at the bit to try the next one. But if anybody else has any like Indiana Jones or The Mummy ripoffs that they want to send me and that are actually good, like, be my fucking guest. Like, I'm still looking, clearly. The Governess Game by Tessa Dare. So at this point, I just started getting silly with it. I was like, my reading pages are down for 2026. I've been reading a lot of chunky audiobooks. I just really got to get in the meat of reading some books, actually. So I dove into this whole series written by Tessa Dare. And the Governess Game is about a girl who becomes a governess on accident. So she is a clock setter. That's like her entire job. Alexandra is the person that comes to your house when your clock needs to be set, which I didn't know was a job. She ends up being the governess for these two orphans, and the orphans were hysterical, I'm sorry to say. And they were taken in by their cousin, uncle, I don't really remember, but he lives by one rule, that he is not to be attached to anybody. He is a rake. They all are. Every single one of them. This one is very much lust at first sight. Like, they're just like, yeah, for the duration of my employment here, we're just gonna bang it out. Okay, not really a very complicated premise, but the orphans were very funny because one of them is the like emotionally blocked off one, like, don't try to get close to me, you won't even get close. And then her little sister has this wooden doll named Millicent that she kills every day. So that's the whole thing. That's their whole bit, is that she is like fascinated by diseases, and it's like manifesting in her grief because their parents died, obviously because they're orphans. She's like killing her doll in different ways every day, and it's just like, today it was typhus, today it was consumption. It was not only funny, it was different. I mean, I reward funny and different on this channel. However, the next one was my absolute favorite. This one is so fucking hysterical. I was giggling and kicking my feet the whole time. So the Wallflower Wager by Tessa Dare. Because in between all of this, like, the girls are all friends. They're all in this like rotating friend group because they all are. And the girly pop in this one, her name is Penelope. And she is a girl boss who lives by herself. Her family is just like, you can live by yourself for however long we want to let you be a spinster. Like, Penelope wants to be a spinster, but her family is like, no, actually, you have to get married eventually. And she's kind of running out the clock. She spends the entirety of her time living by herself, basically turning her house into a giant animal sanctuary. She has like a two-legged dog and a parrot that used to live in a brothel, so it only knows how to say curse words. There's a goat and an otter and a hedgehog. And the guy who moves in next to her, his name is Gabriel, and he is kind of known for kicking people when they're down and also buying out all their property. So he was poor, and then he got rich by basically buying out people in bankruptcy. So he buys the house next to her, and he wants to flip it and sell it, but he can't do that when there's an animal sanctuary next door. Her family is like, you gotta do something. You gotta go out into society. You have to get into the social pages. You have to get married, and also you have to get rid of all your animals. And Gabriel wants to get rid of all her animals so he could sell the house next to her. Surely that's just a simple premise, to like send all these animals to like a farm and then everybody lives happily ever after. Actually, no. And then another minor detail about Penelope that you hear throughout the other two books and this one is that she is also a vegetarian. and she is constantly trying to make meat substitute meals. So she makes spam instead of ham. Everyone in the friend group has to pretend that they like it, and everybody new in the friend group is told in like this dark corner, they're like, listen, Penelope is going to give you the most disgusting thing you've ever had in your entire life, but you're going to pretend that you like it and you're going to tell her it's delicious. And I think that little subplot is so funny because it's really, they just want her to be happy. Like, she is just this girl who desires to be a spinster and wants to have her little animal sanctuary, and she is a vegetarian who just wants to share her fun little experiments with everybody else around her, and not in a way to make everybody else vegetarian. She's like, look what I invented, isn't it great? And they're like, yeah, it's so great. It's been 2.5 hours. This is taking much longer than I thought. Mistborne by Brandon Sanderson. Jesus fucking Christ. I wished that someone could give me a gun so I could kill Kelsier myself. I fucking hated that man. Like, I understand that his entire shtick is that he is just trying to teach Vin how to be an allomancer and that he is like the mastermind behind the Ska Rebellion and everything. But my fucking God, that guy was fucking annoying. I felt like he was holding me at gunpoint with a laser pointer and a whiteboard with multiple colors, and he's just like, look, this is how the magic system works. And I'm just like being threatened with my life because I didn't want to be there. Oh my fucking God, this book was so annoying. Kelsier was annoying. The magic system made no sense. And I'm going to make everybody who liked this book and this series very, very mad when I say that if you took the science fiction elements out of this story, it would be better. This is the kind of story that happens when the author does not trust their audience to figure it out on their own. And it might be one of my biggest gripes about this book is that Sanderson spends the entirety of the book telling and not showing. And it feels condescending and tangential, like every time. You find this a lot when things are happening in the book and then you hear like Brandon Sanderson's narration over in Kelsier's voice. You could just hear it inside your head. So lightly talking about the plot of Mistborne. So Vin is a 16-year-old girl with magical origins of mystery, and she is enlisted by Kelsier to infiltrate these noble balls to kind of find out information about the ruling class so that they could like tear them down from the inside. So she is spreading all of this gossip that Kelsier tells her to spread, and all she knows right now is that she is a voice for Kelsier, and that is Kelsier's words in her mouth. But every single time Vin is spreading gossip, we get this like third person omniscient voice saying, oh, Vin is telling them this because this gossip is important because it'll weaken the reputation of this noble house, which specializes in this thing. And it would not look good if this gossip spread about the information about this thing, and it would make this house look less powerful. And I was like, yeah, I could have figured that out on my own. Like, why are you telling me this instead of showing me? Because I felt like I was going literally insane. I felt like I was hearing the same thing 3 times between the dialogue of the characters and then Brandon Sanderson's just omniscient voice like creeping into my brain, telling me everything that I could already figure out on my own because I'm not stupid. I felt like Kelsier was making us experience the entire plot in the form of a flowchart. This is happening because then this will happen, and then this will happen because this will happen, and then this will happen afterwards. And if this happens, there are 2 things that could happen. Either this that could happen or that could happen. And I'm like, what is happening? What's happening? I said I was bored, which was not to say that the plot was uninteresting, so long as you bypassed all of the weird bits about women and about Kelsier's weird comments towards Vin, who's a 16-year-old girl, and the whole, like, if you breed with a Ska woman, you must kill her afterwards so she never has a child. And then they said the words that I'll never forget. They said plantation Ska. Ska is the underclass. So what's a plantation Ska? Brandon Sanderson, what is that? That should not be a thing. I don't call me fucking crazy. Also, I don't care that I'm going to spoil it, but Kelsier literally sacrifices himself in the stupidest way possible. Literally, this is the most stupid, ridiculous, and incoherent way possible. His real goal was to become a god, and his whole thing was like, my role in this revolution and in this rebellion is not to lead it, but to be the reason why they rebel in the first place. But even then, like, Kelsier is in his head saying, you know, you can criticize me for saying that I want to do this for the Ska when I should have spent more time with them personally, or I should have done more to connect with them. But I hope that me sacrificing myself really motivates them. And I'm like, they don't know you. And Kelsier's entire plan hinges on everything going exactly to plan. And it isn't even like, oh, we planned it this way and then stuff happened in the middle and it kind of went off script and then it ended up like okay in the end. No, it went exactly according to the script. And it was so formulaic and stupid, and people are telling me that it's supposed to be written like that, and that's what makes it good. I'm so confused. Like, what? It didn't even matter because Vin killed the Lord Ruler herself like 2 chapters later. I was like, you died for nothing, dude. And he ends up being like important overall as a symbol throughout the rest of the Cosmere. I don't know. I guess they bring him up all the time in other books. I wouldn't know. I'm not going to read them. But he sacrifices himself and the rebellion starts and ends in 5 minutes. Like, I'm sure there's more to that, and there's more to the like rebuilding of society and like how different factions will rise up and try to take control now that the ruler is dead and everything. You sacrificed yourself and then your protege killed the Lord Ruler like 2 chapters later. That's dumb. That's really fucking dumb. But then I was sitting there like, am I having a fucking stroke? It would have been more believable for Kelsier to get sacrificed in front of thousands of people and for the Ska to go, oh man, that sucks. That guy was kind of cool. And then just kept going. But then Vin would have still saved the day. But then I was like, wait, like pause. Is Sanderson trying to tell us that Kelsier's sacrifice only could have maybe meant something, therefore symbolizing that sacrifices in the name of progress and change represent the duality between necessary and unfortunate, and it is our reaction to them that helps us become what we're meant to be? Like, is that it? Did I figure it out? Was the answer democracy? Am I having a stroke? I just don't understand. Like, at the end of the day, like, what was the fucking point? Like, what was the point of Kelsier sacrificing himself? Like, what are we gonna do for the next, like, 2 books or for the rest of the Cosmere series? What are we gonna do? Like, what are we rebelling against now? Capitalism? This book was 3 Kelsiers in a trench coat lecturing me about the magic system and treating me like I'm a stupid little baby fucking idiot. Like, I understand if this is like baby's first complex fantasy. Like, I get it if this is like nostalgic for you, or it was like the first like real fantasy that really got you going and really made you love the genre. I get it. I can understand it. I understand he's a great writer. He's very talented, ? He's very beloved, sort of. But as a first time reader of Sanderson, I hated this, and I will never ever read a Sanderson book ever again. Please, I desperately need to talk about something good. And Now Back to You by B.K. Borison. This one is good. This is a good book. Thank you, B.K. Borison, because First Time Caller was not great. So in the first book, where we're talking about the radio show, we also have these 2 meteorologists that absolutely fucking hate each other. And so that's what the second book is about. And there is a big winter storm that is coming, and they are sent on this little journey to go into the Appalachian Mountains and hunker down and report on this winter storm. And what do you know? They fall in love. But what I really, really, really loved about this is that it hit me in a really particular place at the time, because Delilah, as a meteorologist, she desperately wants to maintain her role as a meteorologist because she grew up watching the weather, and then she started telling the weather, but she is a full-time caretaker for her grandfather who has Alzheimer's, and the only consistent thing left in his life now is the fact that his granddaughter tells him the weather every day. And I was like, that's so cute. That's so cute. And that's so sad. So Delilah and her grandfather were extremely, extremely touching. And then Jackson is the guardian of his 2 younger sisters. And his 2 younger sisters are always telling him that he needs to choose himself more often. And he is always prioritizing the happiness and stability and safety of his younger sisters. And he does not prioritize himself literally ever. And it is the love between Jackson and his sisters and Delilah and her grandfather that really made this love story amazing to me. And then there really wasn't any like third act conflict. They just kind of accepted that they have feelings for each other and that they accepted that there's something there, and they work on it. And that meant more to me than any sort of perhaps third act breakup could have meant, because I don't like it when stories do that. And I just enjoy it so much more when there isn't a third act conflict and there's just two people who realize that they have feelings for each other, and then they get together, and then they realize that they love each other, and then they stay together. Crazy, I know. I haven't been keeping up with the months, but we're in the home stretch. We're in April now. It's Different This Time by Joss Richard. This one is about two former roommates who find out that the landlord for the house that they lived in died, and he said that whoever was living in the house last gets ownership of the brownstone. So these are two former roommates who have not spoken to each other in a long time, and they have to come back to New York to deal with the fact that they now co-own this brownstone that their ex-landlord left to them. Now, I'm going to say something perhaps controversial. This is fan fiction for People We Meet on Vacation, and I liked it a lot more than People We Meet on Vacation, because this is about two people who just kind of end up living together through happenstance, and then they end up becoming each other's person, and they just end up spending all their time together, choosing each other in every circumstance, in every situation possible. They choose each other all the time, and then they end up breaking up, or at least not living together anymore, because of a not misunderstanding but a misreading of the vibes, where they're kind of thinking about taking their relationship further, but one of them gets scared. And that's the reason why the two of them don't live together anymore, is because there was a potential like change in the flow of their relationship, and one of them got scared and backed out, and then the other misinterpreted that as them not having feelings. It turned into this whole like People We Meet on Vacation vibe, where it's we're going back in time and experiencing these two people constantly choosing each other, becoming each other's best friend, like more or less falling in love with each other, but they are not really seeing other people until after like all of that. Like they just kind of have this rule where they say like, you can't bring anybody home unless you tell me ahead of time, which is a good rule to have. Their names are June and Adam, and there's a conversation that they had where June asks Adam why he broke off his engagement to this girl named Riley. They were engaged for a while. And Adam says that he did not break off the engagement. It was actually Riley who broke off the engagement, because they were about to be married, and Adam decided to leave and go to Los Angeles, where June lived, to try to find her and talk to her. And it was then that Riley realized where, you know, he's flying across the country to get closure from an ex-roommate that he swears he never had feelings for, that maybe in actuality it's her that he loved the entire time. So the fiance broke off the engagement, and that is what really felt like People We Meet on Vacation, is the whole relationship between Sarah and Alex. Just, what can I say? Like it felt familiar, and I was thinking, I think this is Emily Henry fan fiction. These are two people who might have dated other people, but they didn't emotionally cheat on their partners on accident on purpose, whereas People We Meet on Vacation was on purpose on accident. I don't know if that makes any sense. These are two people who realize they're like, I only dated other people because I thought that you did not feel the same. So I attempted to fill the void by meeting other people, hoping that I would find a connection that meant as much to me as ours did, and I never found it. So none of those relationships worked out. And I was like, ooh, that one kind of hurt. The Amethyst Kingdom by A.K. Mulford. I rated this 5 stars. This is the best book in the series, and it is the book I was most excited to read. This is an ex-lovers to second chance romance. So as of before, you know, this is a fated mates series where everybody is fated to love each other. But most of the time it's like strangers to lovers, or enemies to lovers, or allies to lovers. This is ex-lovers to second chance romance, which is my bread and butter, baby. The main characters, Karis and Ursan, are both competing for the crown in the Eastern Court. This is a competition-based thing where they choose a new ruler or whatever. They are fated mates, but they broke up a long time ago because Ursan kept secrets from Karis, and Karis has not forgiven him. And we find out what those secrets were. And Karis is kind of confronted with the ghosts of her past in a way, where she has to confront the fact that she is not the person that she was anymore. But she can't blame other people for being either wary around her or kind of treating her with a bit of distance because of how she used to be. The internal work it takes to recognize that you used to be a bad person and that you're now not a bad person, but that you still hurt people, or that you still did things that rubbed people the wrong way, or you said or you did things, you are not always going to remember everything you do and say. And there will be memories and impressions of you that other people take into their hearts and into their minds and remember, so that when they talk to you or they are confronted with you in a conversation, at the front of their mind is going to be a very specific impression that may or may not be positive or negative. And the reason why her and Urson broke up is that she believes that he broke her trust, when really he was acting in what he thought was her best interest based on the person that she used to be. So he's operating on the assumption that she's going to react a certain way based on the person that she was. And then when she didn't act that way and was suddenly like this changed woman, that was really the main problem, is that Karis didn't realize that other people are going to decide for you the decisions around you based on who you are as a person, just because they know you. You are responsible for your own reactions, and you are responsible for going on an apology tour. Realistically, I love the ex-lovers to second chance romance. I eat that shit up. This book was so fucking good. And I know I've talked a little bit about the different colors of the witches in this, and how like red witches are one thing and blue witches, and so violet witches were considered extinct, and turns out they are not extinct. So the Amethyst Kingdom is about the violet witches trying to come back. It's a good book, and it's the best romance in all the 5. I'm just saying. I'm just so grateful that after Mistborne, I've had so many good books in a row, because then I had Now Back to You, which was 5 stars. It's different this time at 4.25. The Amethyst Kingdom at 5. And then the next 2 books, and also the first book of May, were all 5 stars as well. I've just been on a 5-star read kick in the last like 4 weeks, and it's been amazing. But the next book I read, which is second to last, is Fable for the End of the World by Ava Reed. How do I put this? So Ava Reed loves to write books that make me think, right? Like I just be thinking. And oh my God, I'm losing it. It's been 3 hours. It kind of reminded me, I've seen a couple episodes of the anime Pantheon. I'm still starting to watch it, but it reminded me a lot of that. It is quite literally a fable for the end of the world. So it is about a mega corporation that I can only compare to like Palantir or Amazon and Palantir. You buy everything from them. They supply everything to you, but also you owe them in the form of credits. So these are an infinite form of money that you can use to buy or get anything that you want from this company, and it accrues onto your balance, and you eventually have to pay it back somehow. But there is I don't know if it's a gauntlet or something. I don't remember what it's called, but it is a form of televised torture entertainment, not Hunger Games-esque, where you have to survive for like 14 days on the run from somebody who was quite literally created to murder you. These are individuals called angels, and they are young girls that are plucked from off the streets, or their families submit them in, and they are manipulated in surgically and in such a way that they are basically made into really attractive young women that are super killers. They have like cyborg limbs and like magically enhanced eyes that can see through objects and stuff like that. These are essentially cyborgs, but humans. They're like the Terminator robots, I guess. I don't know. I haven't seen Terminator in a really fucking long time. I don't know if that's an apt comparison. Our main girl, Inessa, lives with her brother and her mom, who is a hypochondriac. And her brother operate this business that is a taxidermy business. And at the very beginning of the book, there is this really controversial scene. It's like literally the first chapter, where a gentleman brings his daughter to Inessa to basically be turned into a form of taxidermied trophy. And it looks like she drowned. She did not drown. She was submitted to the Lamb's Gauntlet, and she was fucking killed because of her father's debts. He submitted his own daughter to fucking die, and then he was asking Inessa to stuff her body so he could keep it as a trophy. And this was something that everybody hated about him. They were like, yeah, we subscribe to this like systematic violence towards everybody, but like don't like stuff your own daughter that you sent to the slaughter. Like, ooh, bar. So of course, likewise, Inessa is sent to the Lamb's Gauntlet by her own mother, who's a hypochondriac and who would never choose her brother to go to such a thing. But Inessa is submitted to the Lamb's Lamb's Gauntlet, and she is also a Twitch streamer of some sort. Like, she streams secretly from her tablet in her room talking to her subscribers, and they send her money. And she and her brother very famously, like, do not owe the mega corporation any money at all. That's like their thing, is that they want to owe nothing. But their mother, on the other hand, owes a lot. And what really meant a lot to me about this book is that there was a lot of focus by Ava Reid talking about the people who go into debt from the mega corporation, buying things that we consider now to be everyday luxuries and privileges. So people who are buying the rights to watch television, or people who are getting food delivered, or all of the little things in life that we are refusing to give up. Like, if the world ended and we suddenly couldn't watch TV anymore, except when we were able to purchase it episode by episode, what are you willing to give up in order to do those things to keep your life the same as it possibly could be? And her mother, being a hypochondriac, means that she is constantly going to doctors, and she's constantly being paid attention to by doctors, not just in medical debt, but she refuses to give up dyeing her hair. So she has all of these like hair dye and salon treatments in her debt and everything. All of the things that their mother refused to give up when the world changed. Anessa is sent to the Lamb's Gauntlet because of her mom's selfishness. And that, I was like, ooh. It made me really rethink everything in life a little bit, where I said, you know, if I had to choose between anything and watching an episode of Game of Thrones, for an example, or I would owe somebody $5 for having to watch an episode of Game of Thrones. Like, yeah, I might be able to rationalize like watching a episode of Game of Thrones or something like that. But all of them for $5 a piece? When you don't have any money to give, or like all of the world is engrossed in this like credit system, what am I willing to really give up in the face of giving up everything where you should have to? Ava Reid makes a lot of references also to A Study in Drowning, not the book itself, but the idea of the world being sunken, or everything is drowning. And I think that is a metaphor. I think that Ava Reid is constantly using metaphors for drowning or sinking, or being in a half-sunken town. Like, I think she's really using water as a narrative device, but also a metaphor. I don't know how long this is going to be, but I'm just letting you know right now, when I'm discussing the last book, it has been 3 hours and 12 minutes. The last book that I read in April, and the 38th book that I'm going to talk about today, right now, is The Theory of Earls by Kathleen Ayres. Now, this is going back to when I was feeling a little bit silly and I wanted to read some historical steamy romances just to kind of get my pages up, just to kind of take a break from all the fantasy I was reading, because I've been sticking pretty good to my TBR. So I decided to go off list a little bit. This is another steamy historical romance that has to do with a girly pop named Margaret, who wants to get out from underneath the thumb of her very abusive aunt, who's trying to marry her to somebody who's very ugly and sweaty and ugly. She desperately wants to not marry him. So she kind of hatches this plan to marry another guy in the society. And the person whose help that she enlists is a friend of his that is also kind of obsessed with her. This was a lust at first sight story. And Margaret is told by Wells that he will help her with introducing her to Carstairs, who's the guy that she is trying to marry, because this guy meets all the criteria that she wants for a husband. She wants somebody who is passably attractive, below average intelligence, and possesses a outdoor hobby of sorts, where this husband of hers could leave her the fuck alone, because all Margaret Maggie Poo wants to do is play the piano. She is a piano prodigy. She wants to turn her house into a performance house for women pianists, and she wants to support any women musical performers and everything. She is a feminist of the nth degree in this series. And although Margaret wants to marry Carstairs, and she enlists Wells' help into helping her get Carstairs' attention, kind of like in Bridgerton season 3, where Penelope is trying to ask Colin for help to get another guy to propose to her. It's kind of like that. And then she ends up with Wells, is because this was, again, a lust at first sight, a thing. And so Wells kind of tells Margaret, he's just like, yeah, I know you want to marry him because he meets all your criteria or whatever, but will you ever actually love him? And if you maybe we'll never actually love him. Maybe you could come to my club in your stockings and chemise and play for me on the piano. Scandalous. What a premise. I will help you seduce my friend into marriage because you just want a husband that leaves you alone, but like, will you let me hit first? And she's just like, yeah, I will actually. Wells gets too attached to her and he goes, my friend can't have you actually. I'm going to purposely make us get caught in a room together and now we have to get married. I find out that this is actually the first book in a series of like 8 books. And I was like, oh my God, like this is my next Kindle Unlimited deep dive. Honestly, I just have to say thank God for any woman author out there that just writes historical romances especially, but paranormal romance is another good example, where it's just a family of people and you are just, every book you are marrying them off. I mean, any book that does that with like any sort of family or a friend group, I love you. Every single next one in the book is about another character falling in love. Crack. I love it. Thanks. Keep it coming. A complete aside before I let you go. The idea of paranormal romance is so deeply unserious to me now. Like I can't like purposely read it anymore. I don't know why. I think it's like the underlying like furry aspect of it all. But there's one series I need to tell you guys about eventually. It's like a comfort read to me. It truly is. Like it really just like sometimes when I need to feel something, I'll just crack open one of those books. Anyways, holy fucking shit, it has almost been 3.5 hours. Like I could have recorded this over the course of 3 videos, but I mean, I might not have been all here inside my brain. So I mean, I chose the best time possible to actually sit down and talk about 38 books. Yeah, I don't think I'll ever do this again. I think this is a one-time thing. God, if I ever have to do a 6-month wrap up ever again, I need somebody to take a fly swatter and hit me through the camera. And I only got through like half of my monster. Like, what the fuck?
If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for hanging out with me as I told you about the 38 books that I read in the last 6 months. I will hopefully never do this again. And if you are my raid leader or any of my guild officers, I'm really, really sorry that I did not show up to raid and watch from the bench. I really just needed to do this today or it was never going to get done. So I love you all. Thank you so much. And if you'd like to find me anywhere else, you could find me on Twitter. Remember to drink water with your monsters and exude kindness and empathy with everything that you do. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.